again, snow's taking up all the hospital resources to pay.
They're so kind. They're very incredibly helpful here. But I do usually take 2 people instead of 1.
Well, it's kind of a process. Most everybody pays with credit card. We have to pay with cash, which means I have to run down to the bank. We have to get an account number. It's a bit cumbersome process, but we're working through it.
And we were a little late because the lab was insanely busy.
All right, nervous day. We're headed over to get Snow's echogram, and not only has it been like hectic logistics, more crowded than we would have thought, all kinds of stuff going on.
Anna, the sweet lady that helps us usually, is homesick with COVID. So the chaos started with the busy lab and the bad Spanish and no Anna. But we just need her to rest and get better. We'll figure this out.
Solo mission, but here's the building, 4250. We got to go up to the 2nd floor.
We tried to take y'all along this morning for the lab work and the echocardiogram. It's just difficult to video when we're at the hospital or going through doctor's appointments. And plus, I think I told y'all, I'm just really anxious and nervous about these. The echocardiogram is what will tell us the ejection fraction. We had that this morning. I did not know whether we would find out the number or not today, or if we would have to wait until next week when we have our appointment with Dr. Arias. But the technician did tell us that he thought it was around 20, which is not, honestly, not the improvement I had hoped for. I gotta remember it's still early, but I really was hoping to get close to 30. And we'll wait and get the final verdict from Dr. Arias next week. But these technicians do these things every day, all day long. So it looks like as far as that number goes, there hasn't been much improvement. And I just got to remember that my Facebook support group for heart failure, which if you don't know and you have some sort of medical condition, those support groups, you can find a good one on Facebook. They are incredibly helpful. I used one when I was going through my knee replacement, and as soon as I got this diagnosis, it's one of the first things I did is find the support page on Facebook. And I just went there and did a search and started reading, and some people it takes longer for their ejection fraction number to go up. So guys, I didn't film afterwards because I sobbed all the way home from the hospital in the taxi. I just cried. It was a punch in the gut, to be honest. So, but I have had my pity party, and we got to shake that off because that doesn't help anything. So tomorrow we'll do the stress test, and then we'll get the labs and stuff and the final appointment next week with Dr. Arias. Alright, checking out for the day. We are in the taxi, headed back to Hospital Italiano for the 2nd day in a row. Yesterday, was lab work and my echo, and got us a bit bummed out because things weren't quite as good as we wanted, but we shook it off. Today we go do a cardio stress test, which I am freaking out nervous about because I think I have to get on a treadmill and push myself till my heart just doesn't want to do anymore.
Snow's gonna get stressed.
Yeah, I really don't know what to expect, but let's go do it. Okay, not so bad, and it's over. There's the scary machine back there behind me. But I didn't fail, because I think failing would mean falling over dead. But I don't think we'll know how we did until we see the doctor next week. Just so you guys know, Vanna did not seem to be concerned about my cardio stress test at all. Look at her. She's so relaxed out here on the balcony. She's taking a little bath. I gotta tell you, when you're sick, kitty cats, and I'm sure puppy dogs for dog people, sure are therapeutic. It is time for another adventure here in Buenos Aires. And today, we're going somewhere spooky.
Whoa, Theater of the Macabre.
Theater of the Macabre. I have no idea what he's talking about, but I'm assuming he's gonna tell us. We are taking you to a place in a neighborhood called Ricoletta. And this is the wealthiest neighborhood in Buenos Aires. So we may see some cool buildings and old castle-looking facades and definitely a different vibe. But that's not the vibe we're taking you to see. We're going to some place that some people say is haunted. Buen dia. Cementerio Ricoletta.
Okay.
Gracias. We're in the taxi. We're headed to the haunted place. But don't worry, it's daytime. It shouldn't be scary. In fact, it's supposed to be an incredibly beautiful place. So we're almost there.
At the entrance of the Ricoletta Cemetery is a nice giant park, but this thing is kind of in the heart of the city. I'm told it's huge and very ornate. One of the most expensive cemetery in the city. Now, this is rumored to be the most haunted space in all of Buenos Aires, and cemeteries are really, to me, the stories of the people who are here. And so there are several interesting stories. There are a few of which we know, so we're going to share those with you.
So we are at a cemetery, a very famous cemetery, not just in Buenos Aires and Argentina, but in the world. Now, the first few hundred years that Argentina, or that Buenos Aires was a city, they did not have a cemetery in the city. This place used to be, and forgive me, I don't remember the dates, but this place used to be owned and managed by monks of some sort. And when they vacated the property, the city decided this would be a great place for a cemetery. The people that lived around here were wealthy and decided they were going to come in and buy up all the plots so that they could make it a pretty cemetery. So they wouldn't be living next to a place that didn't make their property do so well. So it had a weird beginning, but what ended up happening is anybody who was anybody, wealthy people, famous people, generals, presidents, those are the kind of people that are buried here. And there are some elaborate, I guess they're called mausoleums, because they're not tombstones. They're little tiny buildings. And we're going to try to show you a few that have some cool stories or some famous history to them or are very famous people. But this place is huge. And we're getting passed up by a tour right now because there were tour buses parked outside, because this is definitely a top 10 place to see in Buenos Aires. Let's go.
What's interesting is this one right here has a stairway, and rumor has it some of these go down actually quite deep. So it's not just what we see above the ground, it's like a glacier. There's also a lot of space down there below. I don't know if those stairs are so if they wake up they can climb out or what. Wow, it's simply fascinating. to see all the intricate detail in some of these structures, the memorials that are built here. And they're all packed in tight, but some of them are fairly large and definitely ornate. And the stone they use, a lot of marble, granite, and other stuff. Wow, pretty cool.
So this grave or tombstone or mausoleum or monument, whatever they call them, here behind us is for Admiral Guillermo Brown, who was from Ireland, so he's Irish descent, but he was here in Argentina and he actually started the Argentina Navy. Now what's cool about his tombstone is it is made from melted down cannons from his ships, and they painted it green to give honor to his Irish descent. And I believe it was 1827, yes, 1827 that he passed away. It's pretty interesting. All right, so this is the monument or tombstone of General Thomas Guido. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but he joined in on the independence, the War of Independence, where they gained their independence from Spain. Now, what's cool about his tombstone is his son was a famous poet here in Argentina and also a politician. But what he did is he brought these stones down from the Andes Mountains, where his father was born and raised, and built his own monument to his father. So it is not as grand and wealthy looking as the ones that surround it, but I think that's a pretty amazing story and a pretty cool thing for his son to do.
So if you can see, a lot of these catacombs or sarcophagi, they have multiple remains in them. So in this one I can see a few urns, a couple small caskets, maybe 5 people or 5 or 6 souls inside that one. So they're not all single resident dwellings. After looking at these are all in all different states of repair, and some of them kind of have not had any love for a long time. Snow researched and found out that these are actually sold like real estate. But I'm sure some of these properties, maybe the family's no longer on this planet, and so some of these are just falling into disrepair. And yet still others you can see have been modernized and kept up throughout time. So here's an example of one that's in disrepair. You can see the wrought iron doors have rusted and kind of fallen out of the track, and the coffins are finally starting to decompose a little bit. And again, another one in disrepair. And you can see the stairwell going down there. And I'm told some of these go down as much as 5 meters down into the ground. And this was interesting. It looks like, and some of these structures were created in the early 1800s. But look, you can see where the plaster on the outside is just eroded away, and even the grout between the bricks is started to wash out over time. Grass is starting to grow up in. The gates are starting to rust. So this is gonna need some maintenance, or like everything else around here, it'll just eventually just dissolve. Huh.
There are a few stories about this cemetery being haunted. This is probably the most famous, Rufina. Now Rufina died as a young girl, and the legend has it, or the stories tell you, that she originally fell into a coma-like state, and the doctors and her family believed she was dead. She was brought to the church, and there was a terrible rainstorm. When the rain stopped and they came back to bring her to her final resting place, The lid of the coffin was moved, and when they opened it up to make sure her remains were still inside and she had not been plundered, there were claw marks on the lid of the coffin from the inside. The body was bruised and scratched up. She had awoken from her coma and could not escape from the coffin and died. She was buried alive in her coffin. Her mother, after her death, came back and did major upgrades to her memorial here. So one of the most haunted stories from this cemetery and in all of Argentina. That poor girl is buried right here. What is interesting about this one is this young woman in the 1970s died in an avalanche in the Swiss Alps. Later, when her trusted dog passed away, they added him and the statue. One more haunted story from this cemetery. A groundskeeper that took care of the graves here for over 30 years, David Ayeno, kept storing his money away and his savings, just kept stockpiling his money until he could afford to buy a plot of land to be buried here. And then he actually had his own tombstone or monument built. And then the legend has, once they finished putting in the final brick and everything was like he wanted it, he went home and committed suicide and was buried here in the cemetery that he took care of for so many years. Now, stories say that around dawn, you can still hear his keys as he walks the walkways, making sure everything's still okay here in this cemetery. We're going to take you to the most famous plot here in the entire cemetery. Before we leave, we saved the most famous for last. It is Evita, Eva Perón, who was the First Lady of Argentina. She died in her 30s, I believe, in the mid-1900s from cancer, and it was a very traumatic loss for this country. She was a political figure, so she was either loved or hated, but by the working class people and the women of Argentina, she was definitely loved. She was responsible when she was First Lady for starting Argentina's healthcare system. She was very involved in women being able to vote. She did a lot of amazing things for this country. And then she passed away, and then a few years later, I don't remember how many, but there was a coup here in Argentina, and she was originally buried somewhere else, and they feared for her body because she was so attached to the name of her husband, who was still president, I believe, when the coup was taking place. So they took her body, they shipped it over to Europe, I believe Italy, kind of to protect it. It was brought back here. It was hid for many, many years before it found its resting place here in this famous cemetery in Buenos Aires. Now, if you don't know the story of Evita and you're not in our generational age group, Madonna actually did a movie and has a very famous song that is all about Evita. Don't Cry for Me, Argentina is her favorite song, the famous song, and the movie is very interesting. So if you want to know more about Evita, you can go watch that movie. Right, Curt?
Yep.
Now let's go see where they have her buried here in this cemetery. Now, we've been told it's definitely not the most grand. It's kind of a humble one, but it is without a doubt the most famous, and every tour stops to see it.
So as you explore this cemetery and you walk around and you look into the different structures and you contemplate the stories behind some of these people dating all the way back in the 1800s, all of a sudden you're reminded that there's a big giant city completely surrounding us with big buildings. So it's such a contrast of the history and the present, and just kind of makes you think about, the temporary state of life as we know it.
it is time to leave this incredibly beautiful cemetery. I wanted to tell you that for citizens of Argentina, entry is free, but as a tourist, me and Curt paid together 2,300 pesos. So I don't know, maybe $7 for both of us to get in. But we're gonna walk around the block because we think there's a place we can get some limonada. But what a beautiful place with some really cool stories. Alright, right across the street from the cemetery is the Recoleta Urban Mall. If you remember, Curt still needs to replace his flip-flops, and I do too. We have found us a nice little restaurant to have some lunch. You decided what you're going to get yet?
I'm either going to get a Philly, a steak and cheese and pepper sandwich with mixed greens, or a crunchy chicken breast with cheddar cheese, lettuce, and citrus mayonnaise. And one thing you guys probably don't know is, since we've kind of changed our diet, I don't eat any cheese, zero cheese, except when I cheat out a little bit. And this is gonna be a cheat today, so I'm excited to get some cheese. One of the things we probably miss the most.
Oh, how I miss cheese. But I'm also having a little cheat. I'm going with a pork which is some shredded pork, barbecue sauce, coleslaw on a potato bun. I think I'm gonna get the sweet potatoes, unless they're fried, I have to ask. And we got, of course, some limonada on the way. Okay, last week we went and we did the cardio stress test, the echocardiogram, and major blood work. We took y'all along for some of that with us. We've been anxiously waiting the results, and this morning, bright and early, we have an appointment with Dr. Arias to go get the verdict. So we're gonna take y'all with us, tell y'all how it goes, and we're hoping for good news, but at the very least, we got a cab. At the very least, let's hope for no bad news. All right, 15 minutes later, we are out of the cab and about to walk into the Hospital Italiano. First thing we do, as usual, is pay. And then we'll head to our appointment with Dr. Arias. Will you get me one, Curt? Back from our appointment with Dr. Arias. And guys, it went good.
Yeah, it really
went good. So my heart didn't really gain that much strength as far as all the technical numbers go. But
it did not go backwards.
It did not go backwards. It did not go backwards. And he said the results of my stress test had him very pleased, that the way blood flows in certain places at certain times. Anyway, he is beyond pleased. Even though my ejection fraction number is only 26, he's still good. And another thing that was super important was, could my kidneys and my liver tolerate the 8 million pills I take a day? And they're all good. So that's good.
Liver holding in there.
Yeah, everything's hanging in there. We're feeling good. I was kind of released to maybe push the exercise a little bit more. So we will see him again in 3 or 4 months.
Now, one thing I will say, guys, is it was really good news, but she still is operating on a bum ticker at a limited capacity.
Yeah.
But we're excited that we're trending in a positive direction.
Yeah.
So.
And with these results, we have exciting news. In a few weeks, when our lease is up here on our little Airbnb, we are moving back into the van.
Yay, I can't wait.
We're hitting the road and we're going to really cool, epic places. So today was a good day, guys. And that's where we're going to wind this video down.
I got a puzzle to do.
Yeah, Curt's got a puzzle because we do have a little bit more time here in the apartment while we get our ducks in a row. But it's time to start getting ready to move back into the van. There's some logistics. We'll be taking you along with us. We'll see you guys in a few days.
Cheers. Guys.
If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you guys know when we put out new videos. And don't forget, you can always follow us over on Instagram to see what's going on in between videos. Cheers, guys!